You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.
We have a guest today. We're about to call a good friend of mine, a good working associate. I've worked with him many times. He's a special guy, very talented. He was the producer on the Blade franchise with Wesley Snipes. He just got back from Sundance, where he's got a film there called Teenage Paparazzi with some of the guys from Entourage. Matt Damon makes an appearance in it. A lot of interesting people. He's a very interesting guy. He's doing a lot of television work, and he has in the past. And his name is Mr. John Divens, and we're going to call him up.
Hello?
Hey, John Divens.
Yes.
Hey, you're on with Combat Radio, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. How you guys doing?
We're doing fantastic. I was just telling our audience a little bit about you and your somewhat prestigious history with the man, Wesley Snipes, and the Blade films. And if you don't mind, well, I guess we should
back before you were born.
What's that? Say that? Say that again?
That was back before you were born.
That's right, man. See, we're already off to a great start with this guy. Hey, let me ask you real quick.
Man, I'm not trying to age myself, man. I enjoyed the film like everybody else, man. I was just in the audience, you know. In fact, I saw it on DVD.
Yeah. Hey, I was gonna ask, how did you that you did the work with the Blade franchise prior to us working together, and we'll get to that in a minute. But how did that come about? You were instrumental in pulling that together and bringing Wesley on board, weren't you? Can you walk us through that history?
Yeah, it was kind of funny, man. I'm a comic book, fiend, and I knew about this franchise, the Blade comic book franchise, way before the Blade film came out. I even had a meeting with Stan about it. I walked around with this comic book in my back pocket, okay, and people would tease me, because I'm an attorney. They would say, "What are you doing with that comic book strip in your back pocket?" I said, "This is a franchise, man. What are you talking about?" And nobody believed me. Not even Stan Lee. He created this character, this Blade character. When I first had the meeting with him, it was my partner and I, this guy named Andy Horn, who was working over at Warner Brothers at the time. And Stan Lee looked at us both and said, "Well, I don't think you guys are going to be able to do anything with this character, but listen, I'll give you the license, and you guys can go, go out and try and get it done." So about this time, this is around, 98, somewhere around in there. I knew a guy who worked over at 20th Century Fox. This guy by the name of David Newman, and he was the first person that I took Blade to. We had written up, a brief synopsis of how we saw the story, so forth and so on, and we took it over there, and this guy loved it. Okay. But he said, "Listen, I'm a young producer over here. I'm not going to be able to get this thing done. This is a big budget film." We said, "What do you mean big budget? It's $10 million, And he says, "Well, I think it's a little more than $10 million, because at that time, the person that we had attached to play Blade was LL Cool J, who coincidentally sort of looked like Blade, even more so than Snipes. LL Cool J looked like the original Blade. And he had been my client at that time. I was representing him as a rapper, and that fell apart because in the meeting, the next place we took it to was to New Line. There's a young guy over there, Mike DeLuca. Mike DeLuca loved the idea. I mean, even before we started talking, he said, "Blade, yeah, I'll do it. He had been a comic book fan of Blade also. And the first meeting we had over there was with LL Cool J attached as being Blade. And, at that time, they weren't really paying actors, rappers as actors, quite a lot of money. They offered him a small amount of money. And, fortunately, he rejected it. And that's when I put in the call to Snipes. The minute Snipes heard about the character, he said, "I'm all over this, man. Please get me involved." And, from there, the rest is history. It did. It became a franchise. Blade 1 did really well at the box office, premiered at number 1. Blade 2 also premiered at number 1. And did really well for both domestic and international box offices.
Did you have a
hand? That was the...
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you, John. I do that to all my guests. I interrupt them. But no, I was going to ask, did you pick the director for that? Because it's the film's got a pretty innovative rhythm to it.
Yeah, well, the thing is that what we did at the very beginning was we sort of stamped our ideal on it. That this whole thing about vampires and how vampires have been portrayed prior to to the Blade movie. We created this whole concept of vampires being able to go out in the daytime, and generally that they were just beautiful people, but they were sort of undercover vampires. That existed all throughout society. Only a few select group of people who would actually know about these vampires, unless you were, of course, bitten by one. Then you know pretty quick. But the whole idea of this is a secret society. These people exist out here. They walk amongst us. They have these they have these powers. This concept before Blade. Of course, now you see it everywhere. It's in everything. You could not imagine a vampire living in Transylvania and sleeping in a coffin at night. Which was how it was prior to Blade.
So when you're
what we did was we put that idea on the studio, and then basically the studio just sort of took it from there. Mike DeLuca, he knew who to go get to direct this, to also help in the production, and then Snipes wanted to play a major role in the production. So from that point forward, it was easy. It was just getting people to initially believe in the idea, that this sort of franchise could exist. There had never really been sort of a superhero like Blade.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of, he, not only is he dark, but he's dark skinned,
mm-hmm.
which makes him a little more ominous, so.
Right.
You had all these things going on.
When you were standing on the set for the first time, what sort of impression did you have from the creative effort where you were like, man, I was walking around with this comic book in my back pocket, and Stan Lee didn't even think we could make something of it, and here we are, with a battery, battery of actors on this set getting ready to do this thing. That must have been an impressive moment of accomplishment.
Yeah, it was, and it's funny. The only person who really appreciated that was this accountant who was cutting the checks for the people. And it was funny. I went into him. I was getting my particular advance on that particular day. They had done some production, and I go in. And I go, there was a mountain of. There's probably about 80 people working in this production office in the accounting portion of it.
Yeah.
Right. And the guy says, "Well, who are you?" And I go, "Well, I'm John Divens. I'm the guy responsible for you even being. In fact, all these people are here because of me." Okay. And then so he stopped and he goes, "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to John Divens. This is the reason we have our jobs today." It was funny because I never got that kind of recognition from Snipes or anybody else. You're just like, oh, he's just another producer on the set.
You had a good relationship with Snipes, though, didn't you?
With Snipes?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We became friends. After Blade, we hung out. We talked to each other on the phone. I could call him up. And at that time, he was moving up in the, sort of in the actor ranks.
Yeah.
He became pretty popular.
He did.
So it was a good guy, and he loved me because I brought him Blade, and which was basically his biggest role. I didn't know that it would be his last biggest role, but it was basically his biggest role at the time.
Right.
So,
there's
always tomorrow.
Has he called you recently to put something together for him? I see him selling those exercise machines with Chuck Norris, and I bet he's longing for the days we had a guy like you try to engineer projects and innovative things for him to do. Has he called you recently? John, get me something.
Well, he on Halloween night, he showed up at my place, and he was dressed in the Blade uniform, and he knocked on my door, and he threatens to bite me, I said, "Listen, man, I got Blade 4 in here. Come on in."
I knew it.
Don't bite me. Please don't bite me.
Yeah. So, what's up with Blade 4? Is there a possibility?
I'm trying to. I don't. The studio. And the this whole production. Because Snipes had his production company heavily involved in the production of Blade. And at one point, the story was they were going to sort of kill Blade off or kill Snipes off. And then they were going to bring in another younger, more vibrant, what they consider to be more vibrant, sort of vampire hunter and killer.
Yeah, did they try and shove Shia LaBeouf on you? Was Shia LaBeouf the guy for that?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. They wanted somebody younger and hipper.
I'm kidding because I'm kidding because they always shove some terrible candidate down your throat.
No, I know. I read that article too, where they want the guy to be everything from Superman, to the guy next door,
Yeah.
But they Snipes, he wasn't in agreement with that, and it was just a lot of back and forth, and I think the studio, is sort of just sitting on it. They'll come back, with something in the Blade because it made money, and
right.
they'll continue to remake moneymakers as long as they continue to make money.
Right.
So I think you're going to see it Blade 4. They're going to have to come back to me though because I originated the whole idea, and they sort of moved away from the original, course of the Blade, franchise. I think, they should have been doing things more like along the lines of, not necessarily Twilight, but in that direction, because you could bring more people in that way. Rather than they went highly computerized, rather than concentrating on the story, is what I mean. Developing good stories, the stories that people can relate to, and bringing in, new characters that weren't necessarily vampires, but were the innocent people. I think that's where you find your cutting edge storytelling in this genre, is how you can show how the vampire lifestyle is intermingled with normal people, so-called normal people, or everyday people, or people who are not vampires. And that way people can relate more to the stories. So, I don't know. Maybe they'll hear this interview and give me a call.
Yeah, hopefully they'll call you, and then you'll call me to write it.
Hey, Ethan, you and I were over at Warner Brothers together at one point,
Right.
They don't call too many people off the cuff.
Isn't that the sad truth, man? I think I got a solution for you, though, John. Let's make a prequel. Let's do Blade Begins and get some guy in there. And let's backtrack. Let's get away from where they want to go and reinvent. Let's do it like the apocalyptic start of the Vampire Society. How about that?
No, that's awesome, man. That's what they did with that Star Wars thing. They started backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can even call it something. We don't have to call it Blade. We could call it something different, and that way the studio won't, but people will know what it's about.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We won't call it Blade, but we'll call it something else. But people will know that because my name's involved. That this is what happened before all that other stuff.
Right.
That's a good idea. We'll definitely get some calls on that.
Yeah. Let's put that lunch down on the books.
Yeah. Let's generate that vibe. Throw it out there, man.
You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmeyer, right here on LA Talk Radio.